Sorry about all this. I've been experimenting with the settings here to get the best stream, so I've been having to go back and forth on all these windows here. But all right, so if I start moving along too fast or anything like that, or you have questions, just type them in the chat. I've got it pulled up beside what I'm doing so I can concentrate on that as well if you have any kind of questions that you would like to ask. First, we're going to go to New. Click on New here, and since we're working on a flyer, most all the time your flyer is just a standard sheet of paper if you print them yourself. So we're going to go with US paper, the preset there. It will change everything, your width to 8.5 inches, height 11 inches, and make sure your resolution is at 300 pixels per inch there. And then also, if you're going to be printing these, make sure you change your color to CYMK. If you're going to be using this just digitally, you can use the RGB color. And if you don't have no intentions of printing these, to save on file size, change your resolution to 72. All right, so start off, we have our blank document here. Now, the first thing I always like to do to help me out is if you go under View and go to New Guide here, I always like to know where my center is. So on vertical here, if you'll do 50% and go to New Guide again, if you'll do horizontal 50%. And this will help in lining things up. And what it does is just kind of gives you a visual of where the center of the pages are vertically and horizontally. Makes it a whole lot easier to line things up. All right, so the first thing I always like to do when designing a flyer is to put my text in. I want to make sure you have the most important things, and typically with a flyer that you're going to be mailing out for an event, most people want to know what it is, where it is, how much it costs. That's really it. You know, name, location, a little bit of info. You don't want to clutter things up too much. So before we get too much into the design, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and type out the information. I'm just going to use generic stuff. If you're going along with me, you can do whatever. So we're going to call this event. And I always put all my text in different blocks because to me it makes it easier to line up. So we're just going to put event name here. And for fonts, I'm just going to use Helvetica, standard easy font. I'm going to put, put everything in bold here. You can use fonts of your choice, but I just like Helvetica. Most everybody's got it. If you want to get really fancy, Proxima Nova looks good. Let's see, Avenir, if you have Avenir Next, is a good looking font. Any of those, just a basic bold font like there. Avenir Next has really bold and even a heavy looking font there. But just for the sake of this, be using Helvetica. Helvetica bold there. So make sure to change all these. Not really worried about what the text size is set at. We'll resize everything in a minute to fit. So we're going to have our event name. Next, we'll put our date in. Like I said, I'm just going to make up a date. Let's see, 10.10.16 for our date. Make sure we have that. And then, let's see, we're going to start at 7:30 p.m. Just like that. Like I said, we're just making sure we have all of our info, so we know once we have all of our info in there, then we kind of know what kind of design we can do with it depending on how much info is there. And then we're going to do a cost, and I'm doing everything all capital in bold for just right now. Cost is going to be $10 a person. And then we're going to put our location at 123 street name, and I'll just use my town. Alright, and probably should put the venue name too. Alright, so this is really all that is going to be on the front of our flyer here. So now that we have everything listed, what I like to do is just start kind of moving everything around in the way that I want it to go. So I know I want the address and everything at the bottom. So we're going to just kind of move this down here out of the way. I know the cost is going to be kind of separated. And then I know I want my day and my time together. And I really want those on the same line. So we'll keep those together. And then I want the event name kind of stacked like that. So we know this is kind of the layout that we are working with here. It's going to be the event name at the top, date, time, cost, and then our venue name. Alright, so obviously we want the event name to be bright. And if you have Snap turned on, which I suggest, Snap and then Snap to guides, these guides that we put in, these centers, will turn purple whenever you get to it, like that. The whole center, vertical center is lit up pink. And then you do the same thing there. And so that way you know that they are centered. And then let's move this up a little bit here. Alright, so we want this to be bold. So what I'm going to do is, if you'll do Shift, then Shift Command, I'm using a different keyboard, click, you can drag it up from the center so that we have our event name big there. Now, if you want to, you can actually make these kind of the same, because one of them's got 5 letters, one of them's got 4 letters. So if you move them over to the side here on the left, now they are lined up left, and then drag it this way, drag this way, make it a little bit bigger. Now you kind of have them in a event name is bigger. Let's see, let's take this one down a little bit, but it just kind of gives it so they're sort of in a box together. You can do it just like that. Like I said, this is going to depend on what words you're using. Like I said, this is just something generic right now. Whatever you want to be. Resize that just a little bit, make it look a little different. Alright. So kind of got that under there. Like I said, it's going to depend all on what your name is. Now, these right here, these are in separate text boxes. But since they are going to be on the same line, just for the sake of keeping them lined up together, it's going to be a lot easier. Put them on the same line. So just cut this one. Cut that out. You can actually delete that layer now. We don't need it. And then put it in this one. Oops. I do not like this keyboard. Alright, there we go. Now, obviously this is sticking way out from here. So let's downsize this just a little bit. It's still readable, but the same there. Like I said, I don't really worry about what the text sizes look up here, because if you actually go to your text tool, that's 46.01 text. It doesn't really matter. Just visually, you want it to line up there, and that's really bugging me. So I'm gonna go back, change this one to an even 105, and change this back to an even 105. That's the great thing about this. You always are just moving stuff around so it looks good visually. Just because something sounds like a good idea at the time doesn't mean you can't go back and change it. Alright, so our cost is $10. I like having all these different sizes here. We've got this really bold. We've got this kind of bold but smaller. And we take this one, let's drop this one down to like a regular and see what that looks like. Alright, and make it a little smaller. Right here. Alright, so take this, we're going to size this down some. Here, just like that. And we're probably going to work on this spacing here in a little bit too. We're just kind of moving everything around as of right now. Alright, now the venue name. If you will select all of these together, you can actually just resize them to where they're all the same size, like this. Alright, and we want to go ahead and center these. So if you will, like I said, drag it so you kind of get that. There you go. The pink center there, just like that. And if you're using CC, you will notice right here showing these 11 pixels. It's showing you, how to make them where it's all even. So like that. So now they're 11 pixels spaced evenly. It's just kind of a easy way of doing that. Now, what you can do is select all three of these. And if you'll hit Command G on a Mac, you'll group them together. So over here on my right hand side where my layers are, I've got this one called Group 1. You can rename it if you want, if it helps you out. But now I've got it set so anytime I select one of these, it moves it around as a group. So a lot easier to deal with there. So I can take this, center this up under here, get that center there, move it down some. Okay, so now we've got a little bit more, a little bit easier to read here. Probably can space things out a little bit. But first what I want to do is select all the layers, and let's move this down to the center. Since this is going to be sort of a poster style, we want everything like this, right here in the center where it's easy to read. Everything's bold, all the information is there. Still kind of plain looking at this point, but it's very easy to read. And that is the main thing. You don't want to pull out some, especially if you're mailing these to people, you don't want to pull out some complicated flyer and people can't read it or anything like that. So if I need to stop, slow down, anybody, just let me know if you have any more questions about stuff. My daughter says, hey, she's coloring with me right now. So, all right, so now we're going to get a little bit into the design here. And if you want to, just to make things easier, you can take these two layers, event name, select them together, Command G to group those. Sorry. Daddy. Yeah, Sophia. Group those. Cost is 1 and then 1. So now you have all your things. So this way, if we go to change colors, we can just change the colors as a group. And then that way, no, you can't sit up here. And now you don't have to worry about changing each individual line since we separated them out. You can change them as a group there. All right. No. Okay. Now let's get into adding some color to this. I had sent links beforehand about the pictures. Really, you can use anything you want, but these are going to be sort of, I guess, like a city, urban, futuristic maybe look to this flyer. So you'll select your background over here, so you make sure we're putting everything on top of that. So, like I said, select your background layer, so it'll go on top of there. Let's see, I'll save these to my desktop. All right, so right here, we'll make sure you place and embed like this. Obviously doesn't fit, so what we're going to do is if you will just grab one of the corners, hold down Shift and Command on the Mac and just expand it out from the center. Doesn't matter if it gets too large there. Alright, so now we have our background. Alright, so we have our background here. This is what we're going to start building the whole design and the color off of. Everybody still with me? All right. If you have any questions, like I said, just tell me to stop, slow down, anything like that. All right. I keep popping the chat up. Check it. All right. So obviously this has made it kind of hard to read, but we do have some color around it now. It's starting to look more like an actual flyer. So what we can do here, there are several different options. We can overlay some colors on it, add a gradient, all these kind of things. But first, before we do that, before we get too far into it, we want to make our text a little more readable. So if you go over here, left-hand toolbar, and get your square tool, and we're going to draw a square around all of this. All right, and since it did it, we're going to just change the color real quick to something else. Doesn't matter what it is. Make sure you drag this all the way down underneath your text so that your Sorry, wrong layer there. Got in that group. Drag that out of that group so that it's on top of there. And drag that group up there, back up there. Okay. Alright, so now we have where we can see. Sophia, get down and get it. Alright, so sorry about that. So now what we need to do is position this square kind of center here. Okay, center horizontal. And center it there. So now alright, so yes, Rhonda, on these, all these, Photoshop is universal from the Windows to Mac. So when I'm saying command, that's probably actually going to be control on a Windows or alternate. I'm not sure what the keys are, but all the things are the same. It's embedding, all the effects that we're going to use, they're universal from Photoshop to Photoshop. Doesn't matter what operating system that you are on. Okay, so really technically, if you wanted to leave it like this and change the color, you probably could. It's readable, but it doesn't have a whole lot of a good look to it. But now that we are able to read our text, we can start changing our background a little bit. Now, there's two ways to do this. If you have CC, they have this new thing under the adjustments menu on the right, and down here it's kind of hard to see. It's one of these little, it looks like the little square things here. Middle row, far right, and it says color lookup. So if you will click on, I'm sorry, on the image placement, yeah. In fact, I will show you that one more time because we're going to place another image on that if you want to. You go to File and then go to Place Embed. And then select your picture. Okay, and so it will embed it to the either width or the height, whichever fits first on your image. And then I just expand it out until it covers the whole thing. It doesn't matter if it runs off the side. All you do is just do that. Okay, I'm going to hide that one for right now because we don't need it. But that's how you place the images. Okay. So going back to adding some color, if you will select this city scene layer here, mine's called example 1, whatever your image is called. But if you are on the city layer here, if you will click on that, and then, like I said, down here, go to adjustments, and it's called color lookup. If you can't find it, anything in Photoshop, you can always go up here to the help menu, and if you will type in the search color lookup, it will show up here under adjustments color lookup. Okay, so no matter how you get to it in the menu, just select color lookup. All right, what it's going to do is it's going to bring up this little dialog box here, and we want to use the 3D LUT file. Okay, when you click on this, it's going to open up a menu full of different things. And what these are different style colors. Now, like I said, you can do these with gradients, but Photoshop CC already has all these built in. So like if we select this one called Horror Blue, it's going to change everything to this blue color here. Kind of gives it a neat look. If you go to Moonlight, it's going to make it darker. There's several other ones. Tension Green kind of gives it a vintage sort of look here. And these are, like I said, these are all preset, and they're very nice. I like this one, the Foggy Night one. Here's one called Edgy Amber, which turns everything sort of orange. So without having to do, so without having to do a lot of work, you can just select these color styles or color lookups and do all of these crazy kind of colors with them. So if you're not doing that though, like if you don't have a newer version of Photoshop, another way to accomplish this is go over here to your paint bucket tool. If you hold down your mouse on it and click gradient tool, you can select these two colors right here on the left hand side and make a gradient out of them. Now I'm going to be using these colors down here. So I'm going to click this one and that one. What I like to do is go up here and select radial gradient. So once you select your radial gradient, we want to create a new layer. It's shift in here. All right, so we have a blank layer. If you look over here in my layers menu on the right, we have our background picture, and then we have a blank layer. Okay, so make sure you're on your blank layer. We have our gradient tool selected with our colors. You put your cursor right here in the center and just drag out however far you want to do it. And what that does is creates a gradient. So we have dark to light on the outside. You can reverse your colors. Start with light on the inside, go to dark on the outside, however you want to do it. The farther you drag it, the less gradient you will have, or the more gradient you will have. So it's all in what kind of color you want to use. But I kind of like this sort of purplish kind of look here. Like I said, the color styles make it a lot easier. If you don't have the color styles, then using the gradient will work just as good. Now the problem is we cannot see our image under it. Sophia, quit turning the lights off. We can't see our gradient under it. Or we can't see the picture under the gradient. So normally you could go up here to your fill or your opacity, you turn it down, and you kind of get a color like that. But to really do some cool stuff, use your layer styles. So up here at the very top above all your layers, there's a thing that says normal. If you click on normal, it brings up this menu here. Sorry about that. My daughter keeps turning the light switch off on me over here. Okay, so once the layer menu is up, you can go to multiply. What that does will make everything darker like this. There is also screen, which makes everything lighter, and then overlay. There's a lot of other ones, but I use either of these. I use either overlay, multiply, or screen, usually depending on what kind of effect you want. So if you click multiply, it makes it darker, and then now we can change our fill to take a little bit of that effect away. Right there. So now we have this really cool kind of purplish, pinkish color overlaying on top of our picture. So, like I said, you want to use the color lookups or you want to use the gradients. Totally up to you. Either way, you can do some really cool stuff with it. So, that is how we kind of get our background and do some cool things there. And if you want to use a gradient and a color lookup, you can get some really funky colors on it, just like this. You can see where I'm changing some of these. It'll do all different things. And the really thing is we're creating a flyer, so it's not like we're making a photorealistic picture. You know, use purples, use oranges, use greens. Make it, make it all crazy colored if you want to. Okay, so now that we have that, we have a cool looking background now, but we've got to change this white box because this looks absolutely terrible on here. And we don't need to go changing our font colors until we figure out what to do with this box. As far as finding colors, if you have Photoshop CC, I recommend going to color.adobe.com and searching their color palettes. And when you search their color palettes, you can hit add to my account. And if you look over here on my right, I've got all these color themes. These are all ones that either I made or I downloaded from Adobe. I've got like flat colors. You can search by things. I've got Christmas colors. I've got blues, greens. These I made, these color themes here that says future poster. I made that. Here's one for fire. So if you add those in from Adobe, they show up right in your Photoshop. So you don't have to go download colors and import them. You automatically get these 5 colors here for these color schemes. And that's what all these other colors here you see on the right. These are all colors that I've made or I've downloaded. And I just save them in my library so I can go back and reference them. Because finding good colors is hard to find. So hopefully that answers your question there, Marcus. And here I will, just for those that were listening here, we'll type this out as color.adobe.com. like that. Go check that out. Plenty of colors and stuff there. Good way to do that. And while we're on the subject, there is a tool. You want to write this down because this is the most awesome tool ever. It's called Color Snapper. And it stays up in your toolbar up here. It's not part of Adobe. It's a separate app. But when you click on it and you go to pick a color, this little thing pops up. And no matter what I hover over, it gives me the hex code. So if you're on a website and you really like a color, you pull this tool up and you highlight over it and it gives you the hex code. You click on it and then you can simply just copy and paste it. So that's another way to get colors is, like I said, use that tool called Color Snapper, and it will give you the hex code for any color that exists on your screen. Really, really useful, really, really cool tool. All right, next, okay, you got me off topic. Let's go back to this rectangle. So select our white rectangle layer right here. And if we go back and select our object tool, or our rectangle tool, up here at the top, you will see Fill and you will see Stroke. So at the top, click on Fill, and it brings up colors. Now, there's all these different colors here. These are ones I've used. If you want to use a custom color, click on the little rainbow icon or the little multicolored icon up there on the right, and it will bring up your standard Adobe Photoshop color changing thing. And you can also put hex codes in right there. Okay, so I'm going to select the same purple that we used from our gradient, like that. So we have pink there, and so now we have this pink on top of a pink sort of looking color. All right. Again, don't worry about the text colors right now. We will get to that here in just a minute. In fact, I'm going to select a little bit darker purple here, and let's change this. Let's change this to a little bit darker purple. Go back, select our rectangle. Let's use this dark. It's almost a navy kind of color here. And this pretty much takes away our text, obviously, because we're using black text right now. But here's where we're going to go back to our effects. Go over here on the rectangle. Up again here where it says normal, drop down, and let's try multiply. Okay, obviously multiply, very, very dark. Doesn't give us the look we're looking for. You can go to screen, which kind of gives it sort of a translucent sort of color. And then we have overlay, which gives us this weird sort of color here. So let's stick with overlay for a little bit. And then we will use the fill option and drop the fill down a little bit. And so we kind of have, it almost looks like the same colors, but a slightly darker look like that. So you kind of got this floating transparent box here now. And again, this is a very simple flyer, but hopefully with these techniques and these tools that I'm showing you, you'll be able to create even more complicated designs. Very, very cool stuff. But okay, so now we're here. Obviously, we can't read our text. So let's start with event name. Let's see, go back and select that. That was on mine, group number 2. Here's what I was talking about. If you open up group, you see we have these two names here, and we could change the colors individually, but if you will double click fill and opacity, there is a difference. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Fill and opacity really only make a difference if you're using effects, because some effects you will drop the fill down to 0 to use the outline of the text. I was in the habit of using fill on this, but a fill and opacity in this instance will accomplish exactly the same thing. And so, okay, if that answers your question there, Marcus, about opacity and fill. All right, so the rectangle tool. All right. All right, so if you have your rectangle there, R trimmer, and you go back and you click on the rectangle, then you go up here to fill in the top right and you select your color. And that's what makes it look a little bit darker. Yeah, fill stroke at the top. So Adobe does that on some things. Adobe Photoshop is great, but then some things are not as intuitive as they should be. So yes, fill and stroke at the top Click on that. I changed mine to a dark purple, almost a navy color. And if you'll do that and then go over to your rectangle tool and change the layer style to overlay, and that's what will give you a kind of transparent look at the same time of it keeping the purplish looking color. So hopefully that catches everybody up there. If I need to stop or slow down, just let me know real quick before we move on to changing text color. Everybody good? Ready to move on? All right, we're going to move on. All right, so select your group or your text, however you want to do it. The great thing about using your group here is I can double click on it and hit color overlay, and it changes both of those because they're in the same group. Overlay is about at the bottom of that menu. Hey, it's all right. I tend to go fast, so if I'm going too fast, just let me know. It's all good. I got plenty of time. And you don't have to use overlay. Multiply will make it darker. Screen will make it lighter. Really depends on what effect you're going for there. Just in this one, I thought overlay looked the best. There's really not a certain standard you have to use or anything like that. All right, so going back to my text, I'm going to use this color here. It's kind of a creamy looking color. I don't want to use an exact, like a real harsh white on this. So my text color for this is going to be EAEFD8. If you just need to know the exact color that I'm using. In fact, I will type that into the thing here for you. Yes, overlay will be transparent. And this is the color that I'm using here. If you will copy and paste that hex code into your color menu, that will change it to what I'm about to use. I'm going to change both of these. And there's several ways to do this stuff. I'm just showing you the way I normally do it. But you will find out if you watch other people do tutorials, there are several different ways to accomplish the same effect. I'm just showing you the way that I think is the easiest. All right. So what this has done now is it's obviously a whole lot easier to read. So we've got our event name here. We're going to change our text color on the next line. Our date, and I want to separate the date and the time into different colors. So I'm going to use this kind of pink color. Let's see, I'm sorry. Got my colors mixed up here. All right, I'm going to use this kind of dark purplish color for the date. And then if you'll click on that same line and highlight the time, you can actually change the time to a different color. Maybe go a little bit darker. Just see how it looks. Just wanted two different colors there on that just to kind of show a difference. A little harder to read. Maybe we'll try a little bit of a blue here. Go with a bluish kind of color. This is kind of just playing around so you can read it. Okay, so we got kind of a cream color for the event name. We got the date pink and the time blue. So really you can change it to whatever you want. Just you want to make it readable. And we're going to do some other effects, so we may go back and change those. But right now we just want to get everything readable. So go back to your text. I'm going to use the cream color from the first one. So now we're kind of starting over with the colors. And then we'll highlight highlight these, and change these by the group actually, just to make it easier. Do a color overlay here. You can do, I've got kind of a neon yellow selected, but you know, we can change them to whatever you want. Change it back to this blue. And I'm going to make this text this kind of overpowering here. So I'm going to drop this down just a little bit. Like that. Recenter everything. Alright. So here's what we've got so far. So now, honestly, you could probably stop right here. It's not too bad looking. Everything is pretty readable. But I'm going to show you how to take this a little bit farther, take it a little bit to the next step. So if you wanted to, you could space this out a little bit since we have plenty of room in this box. So I'm going to kind of drag the event name up more towards the top. Take this line, space it out where it's kind of in the middle. Bring this one down. So I got my highlights there. And there we go. So that's spaced out a little bit more, maybe a little too much. Bring that up just a little bit. Bring this one up. And really right here, I'm just going strictly off my eyes. I am not really measuring anything out. If you're OCD about it, you can measure your pixels out. I just kind of going visually here. And then once I have everything spaced how I want, I select all my text again and just move my text down to the center there, just like that. So a little bit easier to read. Maybe bump the cost down just a little bit like that. And so now your flyer is pretty much easy to read. And at this point you could be done, but I want to show you how to do some more things to it. Okay, take just a break real quick. Is everybody caught up? Does anybody need me to go back over anything so far? Or are we all good so far? And this video will be up for a few days, and I'm going to export it to YouTube, so you will be able to go back and watch it. But let me know real quick if everybody's ready to move on, or if we need to stay where we're at for just a minute. Let everybody catch up. Good? Everybody's good? We'll watch Mickey Mouse in a little bit, okay? Watch Mickey Mouse. All right, we're good. Okay, so like I said, we could stop here, but we're going to move on. Okay, now, let me delete this. We'll start over. Let me delete this later because that was for something else. All right, so go back to your city, the city background. Click on that. So it should be your very bottom layer, your city background. So we want to go back to File, Place Embedded, and we're going to select the space picture that I had sent out to everybody. And we're going to overlay this. And if you will notice, when we overlay it, it's kind of got the purplish look to it because it is under our gradient. But expand that out so that it covers. And we're just going to use this for a texture kind of look to add a little bit more to it. I've got several grunge textures. You can find like vintage paper textures, anything like that. I just used the space one because I thought it was cool. But by overlaying this, we're going to have just kind of a different sort of look to it. So once our picture is in there, select it. And we want to go up here to the thing, and let's put it on screen this time. So by putting it on screen, what it does is it lightens everything up, but we kind of have this, you kind of see here where the thing gets bigger, you sort of have this texture overlaid on it now. If you go to multiply, we'll make it a little darker, but you get the same effect. If you go to overlay, you kind of like a happy medium there. So I'm going to set it on overlay. And so now we've got our city thing here, and we've got now this kind of starry space looking sky over it. So if you want to adjust that effect, you can go to Fill, and you can drop it down, and you can see it takes it away or adds to it. Okay, so I'm going to put mine on about 65%. And so it sort of gives you kind of a happy medium there where you've got the texture, but it's not overpowering your original background picture. Okay, everybody good there? Now, the cool thing about this is that we can add even more texture and add even more look to this. For example, if you wanted to cut out here around the city, you didn't want that kind of starry shape. If you wanted it just in the sky, we could actually cut that out and it would change only the look of the sky. You could do several different things with this, but I kind of like having the whole overlay over it. It sort of gives it a kind of rough looking texture, so to speak. All right, so now that we have that, something else that we can add to this is if you will go back to your rectangle layer. Mine's actually called rectangle 1. So if you will click on your rectangle layer and hit your right mouse button and hit duplicate layer. All right, let's go make a copy. So now we have 2 layers here. Obviously it made it pretty dark, but we have 2 layers. Okay, so you want to select your top layer. It's called rectangle 1 copy, and expand it out just a little bit. Doesn't really matter, you know, just a little bit there. Make it a little bit bigger, and then you want to move it to where it is centered. So, you know, your pink lines on both sides, okay? So you see we have a little bit of a border around it. It's kind of transparent, but you can see it there. Make sure everything's centered up. All right, so a little bit of a border, not much, but you kind of get that sort of transparent look to it. Well, let's expand it a little bit farther. I want a little bit more of a border around it. And then kind of center everything back up again. All right, so if you look, you got this sort of transparent border, but it made our other box really dark. So to overcome that, click on your rectangle 1 copy now. Click on your square. Take your fill off of it. Go to stroke. Select that same purple color. And then we start making our stroke bigger. So now we have our border around it, but we also have a gap in between it. So this adds a little bit more depth to it, so to speak. And as you can see, it's off a little. Mine's off a little bit, so I'm gonna scoot this over to make sure. You may have to do it with your mouse or with your arrow keys. Just make sure all your squares are kind of center, so it looks good. All right, so now we've got this little border around it with a transparent gap in between it. Like I said, adds a little bit of depth to everything. Makes it, to me, it makes it look pretty good. All right, everybody with me so far? Everybody want to continue on, or do you need me to go back over that real quick? Everybody good? Type yes if you're good, no if you're not. Everybody good? Yes, Sophia. All right, and I'm gonna take my zoom tool and zoom in a little bit here, so you can kind of just sort of see what we've done. There, you can really see the texture of everything zoomed in like that. It has a really good look to it. If you took these to a printer and got them printed on a real glossy paper, it would look fantastic. But it will look good digitally too. So I'm going to zoom back out here. Okay. All right. So again, we could stop right here. To me, it looks great. It'd be great to send out. It looks better than 90% of the flyers I see people post on Facebook. To get the space between the rectangles, when you make your rectangle out, you want to go back up to where it says fill and stroke and you want to erase the fill and then space the stroke out. So by not filling it in, you leave that gap there, and then the stroke is what gives it that border. If that helps you, trimmer. Yeah, select your bigger one. Select the one that's bigger, and select your square tool. On the fill, make sure you click the little white with the red slash so there's no fill, and then make your stroke. I think mine is 9 points wide. You can make it 9, 10, 8, 7, whatever border size you want, but that's what's going to give you that effect with the gap in the middle, if that answers your question. All right, so now we're going to add a little bit. I'm going to show you some cool things how to do here. All right, there are these brush packs. I'm going to use the smoke one, but I've got some other like futuristic looking ones too, but I'm going to kind of show you this. Above your gradient pink layer here, but below your rectangle, in between these two right here, you want to create a new layer. Oops. I'm using a different keyboard and I do not like it. All right. There, new layer. All right, so we're going to have a blank layer in between the rectangle and in between our gradient. So create that new layer there. Kind of see it. It's in between those. If you go over here to your paintbrush tool, and if you installed the smoke brushes, then we're going to use those. If not, you can install those at a later time. But that's the brushes that I will be using. So I select my brushes from the drop down here, and real smoke. Okay. So I've got my smoke brushes. This is not something you have to do. This is just, I'm going to show you how to add a little bit of, I guess, kind of flair to it. So you select one of your brushes, and I'm going to use a white color for my brush. All right, and on this new layer, I'll show you real quick how it looks. If you just click, say we have this smoke here, that's what it does. All right, so let me get rid of that. It doesn't matter where you put it. You say it kind of has that smoke sort of look to it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one kind of like right here, and then I'm going to select a different one. These are just random. Put one up here. Select a different one. Put one in this corner. Select another one. Put it over here. So I've got this sort of smoke brushes kind of look on it. Then I'm going to change this layer style to overlay. And then I'm going to drop the opacity down quite a bit to about 45 or so. And that just gave it a little bit more texture here. You sort of got this smoke kind of look in the background. You can really see it right in here. Just a little bit of extra. There's all kinds of brushes you can get to do different things. I have some really futuristic looking brushes. For example, this heads up display. You can do the same thing. Let's put it right here. Kind of adds a little more to it. There's all different kinds of things, but by using the brushes, you can add a kind of another layer of texture to it. All right, so to me, this looks pretty good. This is great to be printed. You have a very good looking flyer to mail out. But if like this would be, I'm gonna be using this digitally. So if I'm just gonna be posting this on Facebook, there's these things called mock-ups, and you've probably seen them where people put a design in it and it looks realistic. And so I will I can send a link out or tell everybody there's a place called mockupworld.com that has these. But what we need to do is first save what we've done. We'll save mine as poster. Save the PSD file so you can go back and edit it later. Alright, so I saved mine as poster. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, since this is going to be used digitally, it doesn't have to be super high quality. I'm going to go to export and save for web. We'll set my quality at very high, and that's going to drop it down quite a bit. I'm just going to save it again as a digital copy. All right, and then I'm going to go to File, Open. I'm going to open up my thing here. I have several different mock-ups on how to do things. Let's see, I have this poster one. Don't really like that one. Let's see, I gotta find it somewhere. Not that one. Find it here. I should have had this beforehand. But somewhere. Not that one either. Okay, this is making me upset because I had it here the other day. I used it for something. Really should organize my files. They are all over the place. Alright, here's that one. Nope, not that one. I will find it in a minute. Advertising poster. Nope, not the poster one. It's not what I wanted. Okay, we're just gonna use this one. This flyer mock-up that I have. Flyer poster mock-up. Alright, so what this looks like is this. And the way you use these is there's a layer on each one where you put your thing. And so you can double click on it. Go to File, Place Embed. Now you find your poster that you just made, or your flyer, which mine is here. Like this. Make sure it's on the top of that text. Stretch it to fix. To fit. That. Save it. And then now it looks like it's actually been printed on something. So we can do it that way. And like I said, you can use these, post them on Facebook. They look pretty good. There's some other ones that look like posters of people holding, but you can do those if you want to post them. Makes it a little bit easier to use. And let's see, there's one other one. There's a couple other poster mock-ups you can use for that. This is the one I was looking for. So if you were going to post it on Facebook, it's much easier to use something like this. Again, take your picture, place it in here like this, stretch it to fit, save it. Alright, now you can save this out and you can post this on Facebook like this. And so now you have this really cool, it looks like a hanging poster. Post that on your Facebook wall, post that on Instagram. Great way to advertise. So